Hello the internet and welcome to my card tutorial on moving a WordPress site to a card site. So the reason I'm moving this site over to card today, my client, We Like Oliver, have had a WordPress site for a few years now. They've built up a lot of blog posts and things on there, but as you can see, they're all quite outdated. So they've decided that they're going to drop the blog. They had a blog originally to try and create some SEO for themselves, which hasn't really worked out. They've never really got any clients from it. So having had a conversation with them, I said, look, let me rebuild it for you in card. It'll probably run a bit faster. We'll get rid of the blog, clean it up a little bit. But generally it's going to be exactly the same. The reason I'm moving over to card is to save money for them. They're paying hosting charges with SiteGround, which is about £30 a month. And obviously card is a lot cheaper than that. They also want to have the option to manage it themselves. So once I'm done, I will share access to the site with them and they can edit it as and when they like. So today we're literally going to create this site exactly as it is, just removing this blog here. So we've got this section. So we've got a section called roster, which has got a list of the artists that We Like Oliver manage. Some of these are outdated, so we're also going to remove some of these and add some new ones. We're also going to create another section under here called creatives, as they've taken on a couple of new clients that aren't music related. We're going to build in these animations, and we're going to also, if I just refresh this page, you'll see the little movement of the header there. We're going to build that in as well. It's pretty simple layout, but it's very clean and effective. So let's get into it. So I'm going to start from a clean build. I have already built this site in card, so I'm going to use that as a reference. But for the sake of this tutorial for you all, we're going to start from a blank canvas. So first things first, delete the text. So I always like to start by putting the position of the page at the top. So we're going to use, if I get this board up here, so we can see for reference we've got this is the WordPress site here for reference, and this is the blank. So let's just start by making the background white. I've also saved all the images and elements that I need in a folder, so it'll be nice and easy for me to access. So I'm just going to start from literally from the top and work my way down. So the first thing I want to do is to add in this O, which is their logo. So I'm going to insert an image and I'm going to upload that from my assets list here. So We Like Oliver O, just to make sure that's correct. Yep, so we're just going to upload that. I'm going to choose the whole image, so I like the little border around it. So let's just give that a name of We Like Oliver logo. Right, then I'm just going to use this, the other card site that I built earlier as a template, just so I can quickly pull in what I know it needs to be. Right, so that's 3. So this image actually needs to go into a container, so I'm just going to add a quick container there. This is now going to be full width. These are just numbers that I've already sorted out, so I'm just going to put them there. I'm increasing the vertical, and then I'm going to create a 0 margin on the bottom because my next container is going to line up with the bottom of this container. So I'm going to drag that into there like that. Next we're going to set the image to left align. Not that one, alignment left. So that's just going to set the image on the left. Right, so that's looking pretty good as a start. Right, now we're going to add the header end control, the header marker there. This just means that this header will show up on every page on the site. or whenever you create a section break. So under the header end, I'm going to create another container, and that's going to be full again. This time it's just going to be 2. The top is going to be 0 so that it pulls up close to the header, and auto is on. Again, I want the alignment to be left. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to add our header in here, which is going to say all things digital for creative humans. I'm going to mark this as the site title. And then I'm just going to bring in the custom colors. The font is Work Sans. The size is going to be 2.5. The weight is bold. The line spacing is 1. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add the style in to give it the animation. So the animation, just to recap, is going to look something like this. So this isn't something natively built into Card. You need to use a bit of CSS to do it. So under the container, I'm going to add a control and the footer. So we'll be working more on this later, but just for now, I'm going to add an embed into here. And this is going to be the code embed. So we're just going to call this header animation. And it's going to be hidden, and it's going to be in the header. So I've actually saved the CSS that I created earlier in a note up here. So I'm just going to go ahead and paste that into here. Right, so just a little run through. So we've created the style, up is the class name, the position is relative as it's going to happen in its place once we've got the header at the top. The animation name, I've just called it WLOH1 for We Like Oliver and header 1. The animation duration is going to be 1 second. The animation fill mode is forwards. All this does is make sure that the animation stops when it gets to the end and doesn't reset itself. So this text is going to basically move up, and then when it stops, it's going to stay where it is. If this wasn't there, this text would move to the top, and then after a second, it would revert back to where it started from. The animation delay is 1 second, so after the site loads, then the animation will happen 1 second later. Then we've set our keyframes here. So we've got We Like Oliver H1, which is the name, so this has to match this. You can name this whatever you like. Then we're going to start from 0%, so we actually don't need this left here, but we're going to start top at 0 pixels, which means it's going to start in place, and then at 100%, it's going to do minus 25%. So it means that it's going to move up 25 pixels, not percent, sorry, pixels here. So it's going to move up 25 pixels. And then we just close it all off. There we go. I'm going to put this in the description below so you can copy and edit that as you want. There are a lot more things you can do with keyframes. You can set different percentages to do different things. So you could say, for example, 10%, and then you could have it move off to the left 50 pixels, and then off to the right at 20%. You get the idea. It's worth having a play around with it. So now we put that in there, we calls the class up. So all we're going to do is go into our header. We're going to go to the settings, and we're going to add the class up in here, and we're going to save that. Right, so just for a test, let's just publish this site. So we're going to call it We Like Oliver Test, and We Like Oliver Test, and then we're just going to publish it to a card domain. So let's just call it We Like Oliver Test, see if that's available. Checking. Great. And we're just going to publish that. I'll get this publish failed quite a lot now since they've moved to the AWS servers, but it always seems to work second time. So just publish that again, and then it publishes, no problem. So we're just going to view the site now. So hopefully we should have a little animation. There we go. So that's very nice and clean. So 25% is what we needed on this, but for example, you could make it, you could say, oh, you want it to go down 250 pixels, for example. It's worth noting that this CSS doesn't affect any of the other elements. There we are. So it's a much bigger drop. So if you had a nut, so for example, looking at these bits here on the lower screen, if you had the text here coming down, it would probably be sitting over here somewhere. So it's important to note that you need to have space for the text to move into for it to look right. So I'm just going to go back and just change the text again back to -25 and save that, and we're done. Right, so that's the header done. So now we're going to move on to the title body, which is just this bit of text here. We Like Oliver is a London-based all things digital company for musicians, artists, visual artists, and creative types. So I'm just going to copy that from there. So then we're just going to add a bit of text here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a style for this, and I'm just going to call this body. So this is going to be the style that we're going to use for all body text on the website. Obviously it's not going to be that big, so I'm just going to get my settings from one I made earlier. So we're just going to go and just update these. So the color, the font is Work Sans, the size is 0.75, the weight is going to be regular, and the line spacing is 1.25. So now we're just going to give the colors, the We Like Oliver, some color, and we're going to bold out these bits here as well. London, musician, artist, visual artists, and creative types. So to give We Like Oliver some color, we're going to open a square bracket, and we're going to close a square bracket. Then we're going to open a squiggly bracket, and we're going to put in the color, which is and then we're just going to close the squiggly brackets, and that makes that blue. So also we need to make it bold, so we're just going to double star before and after, and then that bolds it out. And then the same for the rest of these. We're not changing the color, we're just bolding them, so we can just put the stars before and after to bold them. And there we go. Right, so we've got an issue where this now is moving over onto 2 lines, whereas over here it's 1 line. So we're just going to address that by increasing the page width. So the width we have here. So we want to find the page element, which is here, and we want to increase the width to what I've already picked earlier, which was 49. So I think that's fine. So there we go. So that's looking very close now to this side over here. So the next thing we're going to do is add in these buttons. So we've got these 3 buttons with hover effects over them. One thing that we're not able to do in card is change the color of the text of the button when you roll over it. So you can see here that view our roster is a very like dark gray color, and when you roll over it the text turns white. That's not possible in card at the moment, so we're just going to find a little workaround for that. So if we add in our button element and we'll create 3 buttons and we'll just label them. So our story, what we do, and view our roster. So the first 2 buttons are the same color, so we're going to edit that in the appearance here, and then we're going to edit the 3rd button's color by changing the colors in the optional section down here. So I've just grabbed the blue for the background. And the off-white grey colour for the hover. The label is white. The height, I know that I set earlier, is 1.75. And the corner rounding is 0.25. So as you can see, we have these 3 buttons that we can roll over. Now we're going to change this view roster to match the grey of this button over here. So we're going to go back to our buttons, view our roster. So the background color is going to be this white/grey color. The hover is then the blue color. And then we're going to pick a color for the label, which is going to be that. So now you can see it matches nicely here. The only thing is when we roll over it, it's a little bit hard to see, but I think for the fact that it changes color and it's obvious you can click on it, we'll let that one slide. It's not that much of a big deal, I don't think. Looking back over here, the next thing we need to do is we need to increase this space here. So the easiest thing that I find to do is to just add a divider and then make the divider transparent. So we're going to add a divider. I like to just, probably because I'm a little bit OCD, is to set the color to black and then take the transparency all the way to 0. So it's effectively just 8 zeros. I also like to put the width to 1, but I guess that's not really necessary. So that looks pretty good. So now we're going to add in the social media icons, which are Spotify, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook just here. So from the plus, we're just going to add in the icons, and then just going to add 4 icons like this. And then I'm just going to pick, so you can actually type out what you want. So Spotify, and then Instagram, Twitter, and then Facebook. So I'm not going to add in the actual addresses, but you can just change the URL here to the correct URL that you need. So now I'm going to go and grab the colors for each of these. So Spotify and this lovely green. So obviously when you're adding an icon, colors, don't forget to add the hash before. Instagram. Twitter. And finally, Facebook. Now, why's that not worked? Twitter. One thing I would note is that when you get to the end is if you press enter, because sometimes it doesn't save it, so it's just worth pressing enter just to be sure. And then finally Facebook. That's wrong because it's in the URL. Right, okay, so there we have our 4 colors. On the original WordPress site, these are a bit closer together, but actually I quite like them spaced out like this, so I think we're going to leave them. The only other thing we need to do is that the hover color on here is this black color, so we're just going to match that with the header color. So I'm just going to grab that code. So rather than doing it in each of these 4, you can just do it in the appearance section here. So you can just set the hover to be that. And now hopefully when we hover over, we get the nice just off black color there. So that is our header and our main section on the first page done. So looking back through the WordPress site, the news section now is going to be removed, so we can ignore all of this, and we're now going to add in the roster. So what we have here is the rollover hover animation on the images that we're going to create. So underneath the container, we're going to add another control, and this is just going to be a scroll point. We're not going to set any scrolls, any buttons to scroll to this section just yet, but it's just good practice to, I think, to create the names and create the scroll points just so you can so it breaks it up in your own mind when you're editing. So we've created that. Now we're just going to create a container. So the first is the header, which is obviously a single container, a single column container, and then we're going to create a double column container for the actual musicians and artists that we're going to be adding in below. So I'm just going to set the settings that I've already created earlier. So vertical 1, the top is going to be 0, and the bottom is going to be set to auto. Then we're going to add in our text, and the first thing to do is to add the style. So this is going to be our H2 style for header 2. Put in the colors. This is work sand. The font size is going to be 2, and the weight is going to be bold. Line spacing is 1. And then we're going to obviously have to change the name up here. So this is going to be roster. Great, so we've created that container and that text box. So the next thing to do is to create another container. Now, as we're going to be using this container multiple times, it's worth giving it a style. So let's call it roster con for container, remembering that the style names can't be that long, so you don't get that many characters, so it's good to abbreviate things where you can. So roster container, we're then going to create the columns. So we have 2 equal columns at 50% each. And now we're going to add our first image. So I'm going to upload from my collection that I created earlier. So this is the image for the band Barnaby Bright. Make sure you change the alt text because it will copy across from the previous image you put in. So we're just going to call them Barnaby Bright. We'll leave the link URL blank for now. We'll be updating that shortly. So from the appearance, we're just going to match from what I've created earlier. So the width is going to be max, the height is auto, the shape is rectangle. I'm going to set the corner rounding to 0.5, I think. Let's have a look. Yeah, that looks about right. 0.5. We're now going to give this a style as well because we're using this image multiple times. So we'll just call it roster img for image. And now you can either create a new image or you can duplicate it. I would find it easy just to duplicate, and then you can then upload your second image, which for this is going to be the new artist, Edison Miller. And now we have the 2 header images for the roster. The next thing we want to do is create the animation, which is just this very subtle increase in size as you roll over. So for that we need a little bit of CSS to do that. So in the footer down here we've got this header animation. Now you can create styles all together, but if you've only got a couple and you want to keep them separate just for ease of editing, it may be worth just adding a second embed. So what I'm going to do is just copy this and then I'm going to rename it as hover. And then I'm just going to delete all this text in here, and I'm going to go and grab the code I created earlier. And I'll paste that in there. So we've got the class of animate, which is what we're going to give to the images in a minute. And the transition will happen over 0.3 seconds. The Z index, I don't think we actually need that. So the opacity on the image before you roll over it will be 0.9. And then once you hover over it, the scale is going to increase by 1.05, which is effectively 5%. And the opacity is going to go to 1, which means that the image will look as it's meant to. So we'll press done on that. Again, I'll put the code here in the description for you. So if we go into one of our images and we go to settings, and we're going to add the class animate and save that. And then we're going to go over to the other image and we're going to add the class animate in there as well. Right, so let's press done on that. And if we save this and publish it, just to check that it's working. So view site. Okay, did you see that? This roster image had moved up, so that means that there's a CSS class in there that we need to remove, so we'll do that in a second. So all we're going to now check is roll your mouse over, and there we go. So you can see the opacity increases as we roll over, and the image gets bigger by 5%. And we'll check on this Edison Miller image as well. Yeah, there we go. It's a lot. As it's a very dark image, this Edison Miller image, you can see better the opacity increasing. So it's gone from 0.9 to 1, so 1 is 100%. Full image. Nice. Okay, so let's just go back and fix our error on the roster. So if we go into roster here, we can go to settings, and then all we've got is the class here up, which has been automatically added because we made it in the last header. So we're just going to delete that, and that's done. Right, so the next thing we need to do is to add the artist titles here, and then add a bit of and then add the bios that are here. So I'm going to click on this image and I'm going to do the plus and I'm going to add the text. So that's now added that in. So we're going to set our appearance here. And the style we're looking for here is going to be H4 because I'm going to make an H3 style later on. So the text size is going to be 1.125. The weight is bold, the line spacing is 1. So I'm just going to add the text as Barnaby Bright. And then I'm just going to duplicate that, drag that over and rename it to Edison Miller. Now we're going to add in the body text, so text again. Now we can go back to our styles and we can select body, which will automatically create our body text from what we used at the top up here. So I'm just going to grab that Barnaby Bright bio text and paste it into there. And there we go, looking pretty good. Now I'm just going to duplicate this, drag it over to Edison Miller, grab his bio, and paste it in there. So we've got a few italics text down here, so I think that's a triple star. No, sorry, it's actually a single star, isn't it? Yep, there we are. Okay, great. So now we are going to duplicate this whole container as we have 2 more artists to add. So I'm just going to grab my image, which is Steph Taylor, accept, and then I'm going to add the band Van Susans and upload them and accept. Right, let me just the other thing to remember to do is to make sure that you've changed your alt text and all these images, because as we've duplicated them, they're all going to say Barnaby Bright. So just need to go around there. Great. So let's save this and publish it and just see what it looks like. Right, so we've also got this text moving up, which I didn't notice a minute ago, so we'll sort that out in a second. The roster text has stopped moving up now, which is great. So all these images are moving, which is wonderful. Looks really good. Right, so let's go back and correct that. So again, click into here, into settings, and just going to delete the up there, and that's it. Right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to basically recreate this section, but call it creatives, as we've got 3 other businesses to add in. So I'm just going to probably go ahead and do this quickly and fast forward this for you because it's, you know, I've done it before, so you don't need to see it again. So just hold tight for a few seconds. Okay, so we only have 3 businesses here, so this 4th one can just be blank. So the thing to do is to delete everything in here that we've just duplicated, and then if you go to the container settings here, and then from the right section we want to select spacer only. So that basically is just telling card that actually we don't want to have anything here, and you can just leave that as a blank space. So there we go. Right, so the next thing I want to do is I want to create the footer. So if we scroll to the bottom here, we've got this nice footer here with the Oliver logo, some copyright info, a sub menu here, and then we've got the social media icons here again. So let's just go ahead and create that. So we're going to do it from underneath the footer because obviously we want it to appear on every page. So the first thing we're going to do is to create a container. And we're going to make that into 3 columns. It's interesting to note that Card will automatically basically make a guess on what sizes you want the different columns to be. If you want to adjust them, it will then adjust the other 2 accordingly, and it's making the middle one slightly bigger to give it some even spacing and to make it symmetrical. So I'm going to add in an image, which is going to be the We Like Oliver logo. And on this occasion, I'm going to just make it fit into the, I don't want any big borders basically. So just drag that out a tiny bit more. And the top and bottom is fine, so just going to accept that. Right, so that's far too big, so let's just check these settings that I created earlier. So we're going to make the width, let's just type it out, 6.5. The height is also, it's a rectangle. The corner rounding doesn't matter, so we're going to turn that off. The margins are 0. Okay, that looks good. So that's also left aligned for us as well, which is what we want. Right. So let's then create the text for the footer underneath. So this could be, we could use the body text here, but actually the text is slightly smaller. So we're going to just set this to none because this is going to be the only place on the site that we're going to use this. So we're just going to drag this down ever so slightly to the next one down, which is 625, and it's going to be regular, and we're going to increase the line spacing to 1.75, like so. Okay, and then we're just going to go in and add the text. So I've added the copyright symbol in here. Cookie policy and privacy policy will be linked later. That actually uses a third-party plugin to get that to work on WordPress. So I'll probably end up doing another video on how to do cookie policies and privacy policies in Card later. So for now, they're just going to be left blank. The website, I've added this additional line in here, which is just linking to my website. So to do the link, we just opened up the square brackets and closed them, and then we opened up the round brackets and just added in the address. It's interesting to know that if you put / blank at the end of address, it will then open up the link in a separate tab, so it won't take you away from the main website, which is a useful tip if you want to keep people on your site. Okay, the only other thing that we want to do is we want to make the links a different color. So from the appearance, all we can do is just select the link color to be blue. I also don't like the links being underlined, so you can scroll down to the bottom and you can just make them plain. So it just means that they're still links, but when you roll over them, it will underline them rather than them being underlined the whole time. Now we're going to add in this little sub menu here with team, jobs and contacts, which are going to be additional pages. So I'm going to use the links section here, drag that into there, add the 3 links. So we're going to have team. So I know that I'm going to call the sections by the names they are there. So I'm just going to give them the URL team. So by putting the hash at the start, that's telling card that you want to link to a section on the card site rather than linking away to a different website. Jobs. And contact. Okay, so I'm just going to match the settings from the one I made earlier. So we want it to be plain, the color's set, it's work sans, the size is actually going to be slightly bigger at 0.75. The layout we're going to put as columns, so they are all vertical rather than horizontal. And the spacing we're going to set to 0 to bring them a bit closer together to each other. Right, now looking at this, I actually think the columns are different in width. So I think this Oliver section here is probably 50%, and then these two are 25. So if I go back to the container and I set the width to 50, there we are, and card has automatically changed the next two to 25, which is exactly what we want, which is great. So now for the third column, we're going to add the social media icons. The easiest thing to do is just to copy these ones. Now just note that when you're doing this, you want to make sure you put the URLs in first so that when you do copy it, you don't need to do it twice. So, but for this demo, I'm not going to put in the URLs in. Right, so we're going to copy that across. So this one doesn't have Spotify on, but I don't see any reason why we don't need Spotify on there. So I'm just going to leave that there. The only other thing to do on this footer now is to put this divider in, this grey divider. So that also I know won't need to be in a container, so you don't always need to use containers. So I'm just going to click on the footer start and I'm going to add the divider in there. So I'm going to set the divider color, which is just a slightly off white. I know the width is 100 and the thickness is max, which is 5. So that pretty much lines up with that. So that looks nice. Okay, so let's just publish this to see what our changes look like. Okay, so we fixed the title text here moving on the body text, sorry. The roster has been fixed. Right, these images have been made smaller. So what have we done? I think what we've done is we've set the image for Oliver here to have the same appearance styles as this. So let's go and fix that. So first of all, on the image, so we've set it as set on the roster image. You want to get rid of that, set that to none. And did you notice that it had the animate on there, which we don't need on that, so we're going to clear that. And then we're just going to go back here, and any of these roster images is fine. So I know that we just want to set them to max, so just set them there. And we've also turned the corner rounding off, so we're just going to put that back to 0.5. And because we've set the styles, it automatically pulls through on all of them, which makes it really easy to change. Just make sure that you remember that if you're adding an image, that it will, if you add a new image, it will automatically copy across the style. So you just need to make sure that you set it to none before you make the changes if you don't want it to inherit that style. Right, so that looks good to me, but let's just run another test because it's always good to keep your changes and keep publishing as well. Okay, so that moves, that stays, these all work, they all change color, the roster's there, the images are enlarging and transparency is working, good for that, and then these ones all work as well. So these logos here, we don't have any actual images for them, so You could potentially add a little border to them to make them black, to make them stand out, but I actually quite like that anyway as it is, so I'm just going to leave it. And now let's check our footer. Looks pretty good. Everything seems to be working. Yeah, great. Love that. Right, so the next thing to do now is to create the pages for each of these artists and singers and creatives. So we're just going to create 2 today, I think. So we're just going to do Barnaby Bright and we're going to do Edison Miller. So if I go back to the editor and scroll down, so we're going to create this underneath the creatives scroll point under this container. So we're going to add a control. So this time it's going to be a section break because it's not going to be on the main page. It's going to be a separate page on the site. So we're just going to call this Barnaby-Bright. Okay, so we want to use a header which is similar to this header. So I think what we can do is just copy this whole container and just drag it in. Just saves recreating it because we've already got the H2 style set there as well. Barnaby Bright. Right, so next container is going to be a double container. And again, we don't need to recreate the wheel, so I'm just going to copy this image and drag that in there. The only thing we don't want to happen on this image is we don't want it to move. So we're happy to inherit the style, but we don't want it to animate, so we're just going to delete that class so that it won't animate it. And then in the right column, I just want to add the text. So just for this demo, we're just going to copy this text, but obviously on the live site, we'll probably change and have some more additional text there. We're also going to insert their social media icons. So I'm just going to copy that from here for now, and then we can go in and change the URLs later. We're also going to add in their Spotify embed for one of their songs, which will fill in this space here. So I'm just going to go grab the code. So you can get this from the Spotify app on your computer. I won't show you how to do it now, but I'm just going to embed it. So I'm just going to add the embed there. It's a code. I'm just going to call the label Spotify. It's inline because the code is happening in the place you put it. I'll just paste that code in there. It's pretty straightforward code, and then done. So the next thing we want to do then is we want to set the link so we can actually get to this page, or the section break. So we're going to go up to here. So I'm going to do it on the image itself. So the link, so don't forget to put the hash in. And then we're also going to do it on the header. So we're just going to open up our square brackets, then our round brackets, and paste that in. Make sure you put the hash in, and then close that off. That's now then created a link. So we've got it, so it's created it underlined again, which I don't like. So we're on the styles. This is going to do it for all of them. So we can just change that to plain, and now it should only underline when we hover over it. Great. Okay, so that's the first one. So we're not going to save it just yet, because now what I want to do is add on this section a section to be able to get to the other artist without going back to the original page. So I'm going to create another container, and I'm going to copy this header from the footer. I mean, yeah, the line from the footer, the divider from the footer, sorry. And then we're going to create, remember I said earlier we were going to have an H3, that's now going to happen. So we're going to add a style and call it H3. And I like how these are all put in alphabetical order, very satisfying. Okay, so we're going to make this text size 1.5, which is slightly bigger. And then we're just going to call this more from our roster. And now we're going to create another container, and this time we're going to have a triple column container of all equal sizes, and we're just going to dump the images for the other 3 acts into here. So Edison Miller, just going to copy that. So remember that we do want the animate on this because it's going to be a link, so we're just going to leave it as is. And then let's copy Steph Taylor. And lastly, Van Susan's. And then we just want to give them some titles under their names. So we're going to copy the titles from here. Might as well copy that one to start with, so don't need to type it out. Okay, so I'm just going to duplicate that 2 more times, or you can just duplicate them from the ones above, entirely up to you. Probably easier just to get them from above so you don't need to type the names out again. Okay, and then we're just going to link them. So we haven't actually created the pages for them yet, but we can work out what the link URLs are going to be. So we're just going to call this one Edison Miller. And I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to put that in there. And then you can just repeat the same for the other 2. Okay, great. So now we can save that. It's quite a lot of changes we made there without saving. So let's just publish that. And view. Right, so let's click on Barnaby Bright. That then takes us there. This then now put our Spotify embed in there. So this image doesn't hover because it's not got a link, but these ones do hover because they are linked. So I'm not going to do it now, but I could recreate the rest of the site, which is going to be the rest of these. One thing we haven't done yet is we have no way of going back, so it's no good pressing the back button on a site. You want to be able to get back to the web, to the home page, without having to click the back button, and that's normally through clicking on the logo either at the top or the bottom. So what we're going to do is just make them linkable. So go to the top, click on here. So all you need to do, as long as you've got the header here in the link URL, all you can just literally do is #home. And that's going to then just take you home, so take you to the home page. So let's just do that on this logo here as well. Oh, we like Oliver logo. Remember to always check before you publish a site to make sure that all of the images have got the correct names on them. Cool, right, let's publish that. Okay, failed again, try again. Oh, I've never had it twice. Has our internet dropped out? Don't think so. No, I think we're good. Right. Okay, so let's view the site again. So now that's linkable. So if I go into Barnaby Bright and I want to go back, just press that. There we go, straight back. Or I can do it from the bottom, press that, straight back, magic. Right, so it's looking like a good site now. There are a few things that I haven't done, which I'm not going to get into in this video, but you can figure out what they are. Just adding the links in where they're needed, social media links, linking out these pages. So this view our roster actually would have scrolled down to this section on the original WordPress site, but obviously we had the news site before that. So really this may actually become a bit redundant now, because if I just show you in view our roster, so called that roster and then save that, it will work, but it seems a bit pointless because all you're going to be doing is clicking view roster and it's just going to move you down to there. So it's a good little move to have, but it doesn't really need to move down like 50% of a page. It'll be better if it was a lot lower down. So maybe consider removing that or renaming that to link to another page, but it does the job for now. Cool, so that is it for that tutorial. I hope you found it interesting. It was literally the first long form one that I've done, so I'm definitely up for making more. If you've got anything that you need help with on Card, just please comment in the description below, in the comments below, sorry. I will definitely reply to you, and if you want me to redesign another site or you've got some ideas or videos that you'd like me to do, then just let me know and I'll do my best to make them for you. Anyway, I will be making more stuff for Card and other software around Card, so please do like this video and subscribe so that you can be notified of my next videos. I'm going to try and do at least one a week. Yeah, so thanks very much, and I'll see you in the next one.